maybe one of my brothers gets married or aunt or a child is born, I do a little report for them. And so everyone in my family has a report. It has caused some ripples, okay? Because sometimes people don't quite understand astrology. Like, for instance, my husband's mother, when I gave her her report, it was like she felt like I wrote about her. She felt like I did it. And I'm like, no, it's the astrology. It wasn't me. And so she didn't quite like it. So I don't know. So I like people just if they want to report, I'll do it. But sometimes people will be like, what do you mean my negative trait is that I can't relax? Right? But don't take the negative and the positive, don't take the negatives the wrong way, right? These are influences, and you'll be able to see from your report and as we carry on that your personality is connected to the divine. That's what's so awesome about astrology is these are divine power. And that's what I want to get into. So after this class, there's some worksheets that I'm going to send out to you. So if you want to uh, do them, you can. So let's get into the zodiac a little bit more. Okay. So there are, as you learned, 12 signs that are fixed to an oval shaped circle that surrounds our solar system. And this is mathematical referred to as the ecliptic. So you're going to see the drawing in your homework. But each one of our 12 signs take 30 degrees of this 360-degree system. So we know a full circle is 360 degrees. The sun is said to be in each one at approximately 1 month intervals during the year. And these signs are as follows. Okay. So I'm going to draw out the signs because you can't see them, but you probably know what the horoscope signs are. So Aries, I'm drawing an Aries. Oh, where's the camera? Okay, so there's Aries, probably really crooked, but Aries is like the ram horn. And Aries has a quality, all of our signs have a quality in a field, okay, or a power. So Aries is a strong energy. So write down Aries, strong energy, and proactive nature. I'm writing that down too. But their field, I'm just going to put proactive. But their field is the field of action. So Aries represents action. So action is their power. Let's get into Taurus. Taurus. Okay, here I go with my art. So it's to me, the Taurus is a circle. I always draw the circle first with these cute little ears that go out. And again, I'm not an artist. I think that was pretty cute. Brett's here with me. So the Taurus is described as sensual, practical, and they're very persistent. So put persistent. Okay, do you know what their field is? Their field is fertility. Okay. Fertility, which represents creation, and this creation always has growth. So they know how to create. Okay. The Gemini is like the 2 Roman numeral, is how I draw it. Yeah, there you go. That's the hardest part. And Geminis are analytical. Think about the 2 minds, right? Analytical and observant. And their field represents and is quick movement. Okay. Now let's go to Cancer, which is the 69 sideways. That's how I always remember how to draw it. Or the yin and the yang. And if you are any of these and it makes sense, you can put it in the chat if you like. So Cancer is they're emotional and nurturing. And their field is, okay, Cancer field is security. So emotional and nurturing, and their field is security. Wow. I have so many Pisces in my family. Oh, that was Cancer. Okay, Leo. So Leo, okay, yeah, no. I thought the Cancer was Pisces. Duh. But I'm still correct. Cancer is emotional and nurturing, and their field is security. So Leo is like, I don't even know how to draw it or how to explain it. But this is the sign of Leo, a little ball with a string attached to it. And they represent confidence and integrity. So confidence and integrity, and they have their field. What is their field? Actualization. So their field is actualization. They make things happen. Okay. Let's see, where are we? The next one. Leo, we just did. Sorry. Okay, Leo. It's like doing the alphabet. Virgo. Ah! Okay, so I have to draw this one. So it's the M. I always draw it like a fancy M, and then I describe it as like the fish hooked to it. Okay. So you'll recognize when you see it on the sheet. And that, so Virgo, is that what I wanted to do next? Yes, is adaptive. They're efficient. So adaption, and efficient. And their field is organization. Yeah. Did you hear that? Organization. Okay, Libra, that's me, is like someone, I would say, laying down with a big belly. So there's a sign for Libra. Or you know what? It looks better like a cave. Instead of a big belly, that what I'm trying to get rid of. Let's think of that as a cave. Okay. So a Libra is interpersonal. And um, their field is relations, interpersonal and communication, I guess. Communication. Now we have Scorpio, and I circled all of my fields. Okay, now we have Scorpio. So Scorpio is an M with, when you finish drawing the M, make an arrow. So Scorpios are secretive. So secretive. And I would say serious. And their field is transformation. So put transformation down for the field. And then we have Sagittarius, which is the arrow going northeast. So an arrow going up towards to your right. And it's got a little line through it. So Sagittarius, whoops, there you go. And Sagittarius is idealistic and changeable. So idealistic and changeable. And their field is integration. So that is their field. Now we're going to Capricorn. And to me, Capricorn, oops, I gotta turn my paper. Darn it. I wanted to fit it all on one. I'll flip it. Okay. Now, see, there's my, this one's gonna have only a couple signs on the other side. My Libra's having a fit. So now we're doing an N. So a small N with a little loop or a ball on the side. So where are you? And that's pretty rough. But it's an N with a little ball. And that represents Capricorn. And they are authoritative. And objective. And their field is efficiency. Okay. Now we have Aquarius. And those are just some waves. And so like two waves. And Aquarius is social and conventional. And their field is experimentation. Why it takes them so long. Sometimes they don't know. Oh my gosh. Experimentation. Having trouble spelling it today. And then we're at Pisces, which is, I guess it would be, what are those things? I don't know. They're like, I guess when you put it into those, what are they, brackets? I don't know what you call those things, but there they are, two C's opposite of each other with a line or a fancy curved H. Okay. And that represents Pisces, and Pisces are transcendent. And we're going to take this further. So just write these down: transcendent and empathic. And their field is evolution. Okay. So you're going to get a little exercise that's going to quiz you on the symbol, the sign, the quality, and the field. But if you take a look at what we just went through, what I love about it is the fact that people don't understand, some people don't know this, and it's not a witchcraft class, okay? But a witch's coven is traditionally one of each sign. And of course, people will allow people to enter the coven until they have one of each sign. So sometimes your coven might have 2 Pisces power and maybe 4 Gemini. Okay. So let me just take it a little further. So say we have our 12 people, or yourself and the 12. 13 is traditional number. None of my covens are 13 people, but traditionally 13 in a coven, and those powers would represent in magic. This is what you get in the sacred circle: action, creation, the fertility of creation, quick movement, security, actualization, organization, relations, transformation, integration, efficiency, experimentation, and evolution. So just looking at the fields of each sign, you can see the power of manifestation through the year. And those powers, those fields, represent also the power and the field of each month, right? So let's take this a little further, okay? I think that's exciting. I love that part of it. So whenever I have a group, I always make sure I know what their horoscope signs is, because if there is more Geminis in the group, then it's going to be quick movement, right? There's a lot of quick, swift energy going into the things that we're sending out into the universe. So that's just a little extra share. So now what I want you to do is, and this is going to be an exercise that you're going to get, but I want you to draw a circle and cut it up into 8 triangles. So do your north to south, right? And then your cross quarters. So you'll have a wheel. Okay, so there's the wheel. So we want to kind of turn the wheel so that one of these openings is facing north. So I know it's not perfect on your paper, but on the exercise, it will be. Okay. So that wheel represents the 360 degrees that I just told you about. And each one of those triangles, so put an arrow to it, is a house. And it's also 30 degrees. Okay, so each house is 30 degrees. So actually, what did I do? So the astrology chart to be divided into 12 houses of a pie, not 8. I'm thinking of the wheel of the year. Oh my gosh. Okay, we need a 12. I'm glad I caught that. I would have been like listening to this as I'm editing it, going, duh. Okay. Okay, yes. So we got make it 12. You got your 12 teaching you of the year. So 12 you want, not 8. So our astrology chart is divided into 12 houses, like 12 pieces of a pie. Now imagine the horizon. Okay, so you're looking at the horizon, and there's a line that divides the sky and the earth. This divides the top 6 houses from the bottom. Okay, so we have top 6 houses and we have bottom 6. So turn your wheel so that you have 6 on the top and 6 on the bottom. And so, where am I? 6 on the top, 6 on the bottom. Okay. Oh my gosh, my mind is messed today. Okay, 6 on the top, 6 on the bottom. Where do I want to go from there? Okay, so any planet at the top of the chart would be directly overhead. Okay, that makes sense, right? So now each of the houses, okay, now picture each of the houses as a field of play. And those fields of play were the action, the fertility, the quick movement, the security, the actualization, the organization, our relations, transformation. So those fields of play are part of our life and its theory. Okay. And each one of them is theoretically 30 degrees wide. However, the actual calculation of the houses often shows each house to be sometimes more and sometimes less. Okay. And that than the actual 30%. So you would have noticed on your chart a degree. Okay. And I think that was the first page that would have showed what degrees are what in your chart. So when you see those numbers, that's what it represents. So your sign in a certain house has a certain degree. Okay. And that's within that house. So the actual calculation of each house provides more of life's major categories. Okay. So let's just take them a little further. So the inner house, which is, and we're going to go into the first 6 houses. So the first house on the pie chart at the very top is your personality. So the first house is personality. And this includes all aspects of personality. So house 1 is personality. So I'm going to take it into a little more. So this includes all aspects of the personality. And it's also the general dynamic of flow of the energy patterns of the psyche. I love that. Which is revealed through the interaction with the external universe and our response to the conditions and events that act upon it. So this is really important to note that the cusp of the 0 degree of its house is also the ascendant. So write down 0 degrees equals the ascendant. And in charts, you'll see that as ASC. C, or you'll hear my ascendant sign. Okay, so 0 degrees of the house is also the ascendant. And this is very important on a chart because it is through this that the whole chart interacts with the outside world, the world outside of the mind and body of who we are. So the sign that sits on this point can be used to show quite a few things about the general personality type and physical appearance. Okay, so let's get into that a little bit more. So you had all of the signs written down, right? Now you don't have to write all of these down because you have the video, but there is an exercise for you to fill these out. And these are things, these exercises that I'm putting together for you are to help you remember and will also help you create your chart. So the sign of Aries, okay? So their personality traits, they like control. So some would say controlling. They're independent. They're ambitious. They're very strong-willed. They're scientific-minded. And they like philosophy. That's their general personality trait. But they have a physical appearance. That's what I find awesome. So the physical appearance of Aries, and you can tell me what if this makes sense in the chat, because I'm going to do all of these. Okay, so Aries has a long face and neck, and they have a little bit of red in their complexion. They have thin features, and a lot of times they get a scar or a mark on their head or temples. Isn't that wild? Like the horns, so they'll get a scar or a mark on their head or temples, or a mole even. So physical. Taurus, okay? Taurus is self-radiant, they're hardworking, they're gentle-natured, they're stubborn, they're private, they're sincere, but holy cow, can they ever have a anger? And their appearance is short to middle height, and sometimes they're a little slightly plump, and they stoop their shoulders. So a lot of times they have a stoop in their shoulders, but they have square features and a strong neck. And they are actually naturally pleasure seeking, whether they're doing it for themselves or others. Gemini. So Geminis are curious. They're idealistic, but they're restless. But they're usually tall and slender. They're erect, yet relaxed. They have strong arms and fingers and a long face, nose, and chin. So those are the characteristics. Cancer, they're changeable. They're sentimental. They're talkative. They have a very strong, really, that's cool for Geminis. They have a very strong romantic part, but I was going to say they have a very strong memory. And they are also carriers of emotions, so they have strong emotions. But normally, cancers are not above average height. So to see a really tall Cancer is quite rare. And they're slightly stout and maybe awkward or heavy, like the way they walk. But they have a round face large boobs for women. I would say maybe some men too. But women who are Cancer, they have big boobs and they have small hands and feet. And they actually have a crab-like motion of the arms. So when you see them walking, they kind of have like, the arms of a crab. Okay, Leos, good nature, right? They're generous, they're passionate, they're kind-hearted, but they can be high strung. Okay, and I think that's why I always remember the little circle with a string because they can be high strung. Um, but they have broad shoulders. They're usually large boned and tall, but with a thinner waist. And they carry themselves upright. So they'll hold their upright part up, and their upper body is usually prominent in the Leos. Virgos, they're modest, conservative, they're industrious, discriminating, and tactful. They're usually average height or slightly taller. So not too many short Virgos. And someone will be like, hey, I'm 4'5". No. So they're average. Usually Virgos are average height or slightly taller. They like to be about 6 feet. Sometimes they can get plump, but they're usually pretty good, moderately body, oval face, straight nose. They're busy walk, and they can be worrisome or anxious. So that is something that they actually carry within their characteristic. Libra. So Libra, courteous, agreeable, refined, compassionate, impressionable, and orderly. And usually Libras are tall. I'm not. So Libras are usually like tall, or they have that tall, well-formed body. I don't. I have nice legs, I think, but we have a round or oval face. So Libras are round or oval face with regular features. Usually they'll have a dimple. So dimples occur with Libras, and they usually have a youthful appearance, pretty good normal complexion. Scorpios are reserved, they're secretive, suspicious, like they like mystery, so they seek it out in people and things. And they are very strong, so they have a force behind them, and they're positive in nature. And they have an average height, or they could be slightly below, but they're full form. And they normally have a square face and a square body build. So when you look at them from a distance, their shoulders, like they have a square to them. Sagittarius are joyful, bright, they're generous. Um, they are meant to spend time in nature. They can, and if they don't get their time in nature, they become outspoken or blunt. But Sagittarius, tall, and I know short Sagittarius, but tall, maybe, in the early 1800s. I don't know. There was a time when we were all under 4 feet. I think that was in the cave days. I don't know. But one of your sons is a Virgo and he is over 6 feet tall. That's awesome. Okay, well, that fits. That's awesome. So, where was I? Okay, Capricorn? Did I do? No, Sagittarius. So Sagittarius is usually tall, slender. They're inclined to stoop though. Okay, so either their arch, their back, their neck, their shoulder. But they have expressive, strong eyes. And usually their face is long and oval. Capricorn. So Capricorn, they're serious, but they're contemplative. Okay. And that's part of their gift. They're also dignified and thrifty. So Capricorns are naturally thrifty, even though they like money. So they always have a little bit of a prudence to them in some way, even if it doesn't make sense. But they're short to average height. So Capricorns are normally shorter, and they have I want to say like almost like a detective walk. So they have a different walk about to them. So there is like when you look at a Capricorn, you can tell like they have their walk. They also have prominent features, so stronger eyes, stronger cheekbones, and they're generally pretty good looking. But they are thorough. You can't get anything past the Capricorn. So they got the hawk eyes, I would say. Aquarius are determined. They're humanitarians. They are eccentric in their own way, but they're good-hearted. So they do like people. And they are usually mid-size in stature, even though my son is an Aquarius and he's a giant. But they have a full or square body build. And their face is usually fleshy, and they're very good looking, like they're oval or long face. I always think it's like an angelic face. Aquariuses have like cherub faces to me. Pisces. Pisces are kind. They're confiding. So, you know, those people that will come up to you in the grocery store and tell you their life story. Most of the time they're a Pisces. And you can test that. Are you Pisces? And they are receptive, but they're also indecisive. Okay. And that's something that can get into a little bit of a thing for them. But they're very hospitable and family. They like family, and they like social connection. But they are usually mid to short in height. And some of their limbs may seem short. So either the legs or the arms, or maybe the forearms, but there's always some kind of a short limb with them. They have full facial features, and usually a wider smile. So that's kind of their key, is the wide mouth or the wide smile. And you have to understand that these are just characteristics that are usually altered by the aspects of the ruling planet, and that ruling planet of the ascendant, and also the planets that may reside in their house. So isn't that interesting that the ruling planet of the sky can actually alter aspects of our character, like our physical being when we're born? I just found that crazy. Okay, so there will be a little exercise on the rising sun sign, or the rising sign. And I'm going to go a little bit more into it. So there's 12 rising signs along the personality traits and the physical appearances that they indicate that I just went in. So try to take note on some of them, or at least think of the people that you know in each horoscope sign and see what characteristics match. Okay. So now we're going to go into more of it. So let's go into the second house. So the second house of the chart is our personal value. Okay. Now, I don't know if you have your charts up. Let me see if I can I'm going to pull one up if I can find it here. It's good for me to look at a chart to do this. So let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Whose chart is going to go? Let's do Lorraine's. Okay. So I won't talk anything personal on it, but when you take a look at that first page of your chart, you'll see there's the table. And it's got the 12 signs in it, or the 12 houses. Now, pardon me. Some of your houses may have had nothing. Okay. So if you look at the third column on the bottom of your chart, you'll see planet, sign, and house. And you can look, that's where I look. And I'll look at that and I'll say, okay, I see the first house. So her first house is in Pisces. Okay. So then right away, I know that the personality is in Pisces, which represents evolution. Okay. So her first house has to do with transcendence and evolution. Okay. So the second house, now I look at the second, oh, you have two in your first house, actually. You also had Aquarius. So her first house and her personality had Aquarius too, which is her social life and also experimentation. So she is meant to experiment with different aspects of life, but as well as her personality. Her personality traits might change quite a bit depending on how she feels, because it is a water sign. Now, when we go into the second house, so if you have your charts up, that's awesome. If you don't, it's okay. There's no second house in this report. Zero, nothing. So there is nothing that is in her chart when it comes to the second house. And the second house is personality. That means, let's go into, I gotta get out of where I was. Uh-oh. One sec. Okay, yeah. So the second house represents personal values. So another perspective of the psyche of the person whose natal chart is being examined. So when we look at the second house, that represents personal values. So if someone's personal value is their second house has Aries in it, then we know that their personal value represents action. So whatever they say better have some action to it, or they just don't even, they don't, it doesn't matter to them. They won't take it seriously. Okay. So the second house is personal values. And those personal values come from the examination of one's personal value. That means finances, right? And the material possessions and the way they attribute that energy. Okay, so personal values, as well as like your morals, your finances, your materialistic possessions. Okay, and this house also gives information on the way money flows into and out of our life. Okay, so there's a huge key right there. So your second house, nice. So you have two in your first house or your second house? So your second house, so let's say your second house, which is our personal value, is, okay, Scorpio, you're saying. So your personal value has to do with transformation. Your morals, your finances, right? So that represents that power, right? The house is your money, right? Your opinion regarding money. So let's go into more. So the second house gives information on the way the money flows in and out of your life. And it indicates the level of wealth and financial security that we can expect to obtain. So this should be easy, right? It's our flow, as well as it shows attitude and opinions regarding money and financial management. So some people might have four different signs in their house. Well, that's pretty crazy when it comes to personal values, money, and security. So the second house represents the resultant of the material manifestation of our personality projected in the private environment that we create or set up. And this represents our personal boundaries that are defined. So in astrology, our financial security actually and our morals represent our personal boundaries that are defined. How interesting is that? I have to take a sip. So your third house are your siblings. Yeah, siblings. So this is another dimension of the psyche, and it's revealed through personal communicative style. No matter what the person is, no matter what the medium or how they communicate. It covers the full range of writing and any other creative expression that is part of the dynamic or interpersonal relationship with those in one's inner circle. So siblings can also represent loved ones, people that you work with, the circle of your trusted people. So it's not just brother and sister, okay? So these are your family, your brothers and sisters in your realm, okay? And you hear people say, "Hey, soul sister," right? So that represents the siblings. So our inner circle, who we trust, and our loved associate. So what signs are in that house? Because you'll be able to see, well, you know what? That makes sense because I always have cancers in my life. I have like four of them now. Well, that's because they're bringing you emotional security and nurturing energy, and you need that, right? So your security is in connection to the people in your inner circle. As would seem obvious, this gives our attitude as well with dealing with people that we may connect to or disconnect to, right? As well as our spouse, our children, right? If we have that. However, these attitudes are also applied to the people in general that are around us. So there may be other drivers on the road, maybe there's relatives, maybe there's people in line at the bank. The idea is that this house tells us what attitude we have towards the many people that we encounter in our day-to-day living. So both of those aspects are in the house, the third house of the siblings. And I don't like why it's called siblings. So just the third house of inner circle. But in astrology, it's siblings. So it is who is naturally in that house and drawn to you, but also what is the attitude you have towards those signs, right? So you'll see both. Now, the fourth house is the home. So this is very important because it represents the first and foremost the home is the home that we grew up in. So when you look at the third house on your chart or somebody else's chart, this represents the domestic conditions within which the person was raised. So you're doing a chart for your son, check out that fourth house. It's going to tell you a lot about yourself or yourself and your partner, or whatever signs are in there. How interesting is that? I love it. So these are how the universal energies within that household created domestic conditions that we were raised by or that your child was raised by. So it provides information on the home and that the home will be established as an adult. So there's the characteristics that come into our adulthood. And this is our personal sanctuary. There's both positive and negative. And it's a product of the original home environment in which we were raised. And even if you're like, I'm so different than how I was raised, well, take a look at it, study it. So what we are primarily dealing with is the establishment of one's personal boundaries and the functioning that it provides. So there is an opportunity for one to project their inmost psychic components. And these psychic components within the home is known as the term of the shadow. Okay, so this house shows us the shadow of ourself as well as the shadow into one's family members. And this serves as a way of reflecting back into the conscious mind for personal revelation and transformation into a more fully and healthy functioning psychology. So our shadow self actually shows up in that house. How interesting is that? For Geminis in your home, was that in your fourth house or your second house? Yeah, how amazing is that? It's so interesting. So there's the home. So the fifth house is creativity. Creativity. And it's like, well, what does creativity have to do with anything? Well, we create our life, right? Some people, we create everything we are. So the fifth house shows us the powers of creativity that we were born with. Whoa, you have some empty houses. Okay, that's okay. That means like you can really tap into a lot. And I'm going to get into empty houses as well. So the fifth house is creativity. And traditionally, this house is called the house of children. So if you ever read, an astrology report and it says the house of children, it's the fifth house. And in the natal chart, this house shows how we look upon our first child. How crazy. And it's like, well, I don't have children yet. Okay, well, we'll take this further. But if you do have children, this will actually show how you looked upon your first child. And the seventh, and it also represents the subsequent children further on. So the 7th, 9th, and 11th provide information on the other children, no 6. So it's for your children, the first child is the 5th house, creativity. The second child is the seventh house. The third child is the ninth house. And the 11th child is the 11th child. Oh my God, I don't even know what I'm saying. Okay. Fourth child is the 11th house. And okay. And so it will go subsequent like that. Okay. So then from the ninth or from the 11th, it would go back to the first house. So if you notice, children are odd. They're the odd numbers. Okay, so just skip the evens and you'll be able to figure that out. So in the natal chart, this shows how we looked upon our first child, and the subsequent children are in other houses. But this house also deals with all other forms of our productive output. So the things that we create and produce and send out into the world, whether that's how we make love, whether that's artistic forms of expression, right? 5 children? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, I would love your house at Christmas. I can just imagine the wrapping paper. I'd one. So now you'll have to look at all those, and your fifth house is empty. That's weird. I'll have to go into that with you. So therefore, the creative self-expression is another way of examining our psychic dynamic, right? This house represents the cumulative effort or the effect of all the preceding houses as related through the medium of self-expression. Okay, so it represents the current of one's life and how that is fused into a whole system or lifestyle. Okay, so fifth house is creativity, and yours is a miracle baby. Okay, the sixth house we'll go into. The sixth house is work. So what are you meant to do? What does your sixth house say? Right? One sec. Okay. So the sixth house is work. And it is how one relates to their physical, their mental, and their emotional well-being. But this includes practical living considerations such as work, our food intake, and it denotes our empire, right? How, or our struggle, or where we compromise. And that makes us, makes inner ideals and outer demands. So this house shows us inner ideals, outer demands of our living conditions as they correspond to our life, even as they correspond to our conflict of our inner life. So remember, work is body, mind, and spirit. It's emotional, mental, and physical well-being. And when you look at the influences in that chart, you'll be able to see what are naturally conflicting, but what are also naturally practical and naturally good for you, right? So these will show us our struggles, but also our strengths. And when it comes to the sixth house of work, it represents being concerned, that we are concerned with life purpose. And our life purpose is hidden within that sixth house. A life's work does not have to be related to income, right? It doesn't have to be income producing effort, but it does have to do with, it will and is meant to be part of your well-being. But it is about what we offer to the world, but what the world also provides for us. So your work, your true purpose, is something that you're meant to offer the world. And in turn, the world provides us with that. Think about our healing power, right? The world gives us the healing power and we're able to use it. So it's similar. Where's your secret ingredient? What's your secret sauce when it comes to your physical, mental, and emotional well being? That will connect to your purpose. So that's one of my favorite houses to look at. So those first houses represent the inner houses, right? Now we're going to go into the outer houses, okay? So the outer houses, the seventh house represents partnership, right? And as this house opposes the first house, right? Because remember, up and down, right? Horizon and earth. The outer houses are part of the horizon. And so the seventh house is the house that opposes the first house. And this house represents how we view other individuals, but also the personalities. So all partner types are examined in this house. So what signs are showing up in your seventh house? There's your destined relationship, right? Whether that's a lover or a friend or a business partner or even an exercise partner, any type of partnership will show up in that house. And what's indicated here are clues to discover what it is that we really seek when we form one-on-one relationship. So what is it that you are seeking from each one of those signs in that house? And this house also examines the nature of those relationships that you're meant to develop. This house also shows hidden parts of the psyche as they are projected on those individuals that you relate to. So this shares a similar idea that's expressed in the fourth house. So notice that the other two houses that have this energy are the houses that immediately succeed one of the angles in the chart. Okay, and you'll see it, and that might be what? I'm lost. Don't worry. You're going to see the chart. I'll send it to you, okay, the workbook. Okay, so the seventh house and the fourth house are connected. Seventh and eighth are empty. I'm gonna have to look at your report. I can't remember any of it, but that's crazy. So that means you had your choice. You could pick and choose whoever you wanted. They'll all work. So the fourth house that relates to the relationship was the home, right? So you put together the home and the seventh house and the partnership. So that those two houses alone, you could do a full compatibility report as well. So, okay, so I'll look at it. So the other thing is when you go into the eighth house, sexuality. Okay, there's the eighth house, sexuality. And as the second one the second house was one's personality expressed materially, this house is it concerns itself with others' materialistic possessions. Okay, so and the resources of how those things can transform your own experience in life. So it shows how one can investigate the internal nature of others in your life and the dynamic interchange one has with others. Okay. So this is other people's personality that is expressed materially. What signs are in there? What people, who are they to you? And the psychic depth is specifically what this house examines, our sexual drive. And our sexual drive goes to the heart of the nature of the psyche. So, as opposed to the fifth house that describes us as lovers, this house deals with our sexuality on a very functional level. So, it exposes the very nature of our sexual appetite, whether that's orientation or any of the varieties of sexual expression that might add up to a certain style. So, here again, when you take a look at your partnership and you take a look at your sexuality, you may see some signs or not that's going to represent some secrets there, some about yourself or others. So the ninth house is philosophy. And this house deals with the question of life. So the question of total life, your total life. What is the bigger picture of life and death? And how does it manifest in the day-to-day living? And how do you cope with it? Is there a certain philosophy that provides the framework by which you are approaching life? So your life philosophy is in that house. And how is this communicated to people that you interact with? So the house draws from the eighth house, which represents your sexuality, right? But also others materially, right? And it also lines up with the work that you must do to comprehend the world in terms of relating with others. Okay? So it's all in that house. Education, philosophy, and religion are the studies that help us become better. And it enables us to absorb this understanding. It says that my internet is unstable, so sorry. And of course, this house is the place where our public personality is constructed. So how others view us is in the ninth house. And make sure you star that ninth house, how others view us. So the 10th house we're at is our public life. So you saw in the ninth house how the public views us, right? How our personality is constructed. Now the 10th house represents our public life. While that house correlates with work, it talks about specific and private purpose in life. So this house talks about public career, and the one that is made with your social fabric and what your experience is meant to be and has been. So this house deals specifically about what is the manner in which you contribute to the human effort. Okay. So let me see. So concerns in the 10th house, public life, is public career, your reputation, your integrity, the significance within your community. Some of you will be like, yep, I'm an introvert. Some of you will be like, wow, I got lots of signs in my 10th house, and you'll know why you like to be out there. So it describes how one will participate in the larger life, that is the world, how we contribute to it, and what we get from it. So this signifies our community and our larger family, right? But this house also opposes the 4th house of family. Okay, so there's an opposite there, it opposes. Let's get into the 11th house. Socialization. So the socialization, the 11th house, is exactly what it is. It deals with the social structure of our life, whether that's the community that we live in or our social groups that we join. And this house shows how we can approach them and what we can get out of them. So what are you meant to get out of your social circle? And this house of socialization is also a creative expression that has contrasted with the individual personal expression of its opposite house, the 5th house. And the 5th house, remember, was creativity. Okay. So what that means is that described here is the qualities and features of your society, your organization and connection, of what you're meant to belong to. And we may not belong to anything, and we may not want to belong to anything, but this does represent a certain set of friends or a set of family that has this energy around you. And with any group, they will express a certain dynamic character that provides a way of learning about yourself. So what is it that you are meant to learn about yourself when it comes to your social life and your social structures? Okay. No, your birth chart can't change. This is it. What you're born with, that was it. Now the interpretations will change, right? Like the things that you'll pick up on the houses. I'll reread my chart every few years because certain aspects I won't comprehend yet. So some houses are more in power than others, right? But if you know what these 12 houses are, then you know what energies are in play that month and how to flow with it and what to focus on. So the birth chart never changes. The 12th house is problems. Yep, the last and final. It's not about outcome here. It's about your problems. I gotta take a sip. Okay. So this house describes how one works out all the conflicts and imperfections of relating to the world. This is your problem solving technique. It shows where one's problems are and of what nature and what shape they take. As the 6th house deals with the conflict of personal ideals and the demands of the world. This last house, the 12th house, shows the influence of correcting problems that result from that. So this house is really unique because it describes the challenges that we face in life, especially those that cause us the most consistent pain due to our unawareness of them. And on the other hand, it is these challenges that help us grow spiritually. So if you took a look at your 12th house, then it would represent the destined problems that you were meant to deal with. And a lot of times, that is something that's like, wow, okay, I dealt with it. It was a purposeful thing. Sometimes we don't know that, right? So let's get into when, let me see. Trying to think where I should go. Okay. Six houses empty. So let's go into empty houses. Because most of us have them. So how should I explain it? So an empty house in a horoscope, so there's no sign, means that we have to struggle harder to extract all the good results of that house. Because they're empty, that means that there's no influences of any of the signs. So the person doesn't get, that energy, that extra flow to receive it. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't receive the energy of the house. It just means that you don't have any of these influences in it. So it isn't something that you should be concerned about, okay? But when we see that there's an empty house in the chart, it is something that you have to look at that chart now and say, okay, how can I get that influence into my life? So if your house 1 has no planets in it and it's empty, then it means that they will have to face, they have to create that, make it their own, right? It's their own energy, however they want to produce it. So it means that there wasn't that destined influence in there. It was like it's self-created. So when you take a look at those empty houses, then it means that you do have a little more work in that area because you don't have anything to connect to it. 6 houses empty. So that means, you might feel like, why do I always have to be the strong one and create? Well, that's because your house was empty. That power was put into a different place. Okay. So I have 6 houses in your 12th house. Or you had 6 house, 12th house. That doesn't even make sense. Oh my God. So 6 houses empty. Okay. Take a look at those empty houses. So that represents your ability to create what you want. And it may be more difficult. Most people say it means it's more difficult to attain that, but it isn't. It just means that you're more on a course of self-discovery, and it should actually make it funner, if that's even a word, because there is more personal power in that. Okay. So let's talk about, let's see. So let's say it's the 10th house, okay? For example, an empty 10th house isn't shouldn't be taken as a sign that your professional life is in trouble, but it actually means that you can gainfully be employed your entire working life. You can choose what it is that you want, but you may not have a career that you're like, I want to be this. You know, there's people, they're like, I always knew I was going to be a nurse. It was just like in me, right? Well, if your 10th house is empty, you might not know what it is that you want to focus on career wise or in your professional life. But it doesn't mean that um, that you don't have a purpose. It means that you can use and create anything you want career wise. So empty houses are like a clear path. How do you want to create it? But you don't have the influences to help. Okay. And sometimes those influences are helpful. They're also not so helpful, these influences, right? So say our 4th house is empty. That's our foundation, right? On our birth chart. So that represents your role in your home life. And if it's empty, then you don't need to worry about, anything happening that's destined, right? But it does represent your family problem, or not problem, your family planning. And it's probably not a huge hang up for you, right? Where you're like, I'm open to having children or not. But if someone had a whole bunch of signs in their house, they're probably like, I want to have 3 kids, right? They plan out what it is that they want. So empty houses just represent that you don't have to face too many challenges or dramatic shifts on your path. It just means that you do have to put more effort and your own energy into creating those houses. So it's a good thing, but some people also say that it's like kind of an annoying thing because they got more energy than they got put into it, more focus into it. Okay, does that make sense? So your empty houses mean that, so the 7th sign, the 7th house is meant to be the sign of your soulmate. Okay, yeah. And that also represents, I have to go back to the 7th sign. What are they talking about? The 7th house, 777. Okay, so the 7th house is partnership. So if that is empty, then that means you don't have a set soulmate that you are meant to be with. But if you do have, say, a Virgo in it, then that's probably you have an Aries. So that is probably the sign of your soulmate if you're not an Aries. Okay. So it can, are you an Aries? Right. Now look at the Aries personality. What is it? Right. So, yes, the signs in your 7th house can represent your soulmate or the soulmate of others. And a lot of people will do that in their predictions. They'll say, you know what? I see 4 signs in your 7th house. Well, that's 4 people they're meant to meet, right? I'm a Libra. I was like, I'm meeting all 12. And I didn't like any of them. And all of a sudden, Brett showed up. And I was like, yay. Okay. And, there's people that will do compatibility reports, right? And sometimes they're off, right? These are influences that we were born with. So a lot of times there may be just one little aspect in that house that's alive right now, but these aspects will change and they are used for clues. So your 2nd house of money is Libra. And Jupiter, however, was in retrograde, which a lot of my planets were in retrograde. Okay, so let's get into that. Okay, so when you have retrograde in your in your chart, so wherever there is a planet, okay, where the planet is by the house is where it rules. So it shows the area where the influence or where they are striving hard for success. Okay. So the effects of retrograde in astrology are very different with the planets, of course. So let's just say with Mercury, Venus, or Mars in retrograde, there may be a focus on inner life, or a person may have a tendency to perceive things that have to do with affairs of the planet. When Jupiter and Saturn are in retrograde, a person may feel out of step of their culture, or they may have an entire desire to affect and change their culture or society. Okay. So if your house, your money house, represents Jupiter, and Jupiter is in retrograde, then you are meant to change the desired effect of your finances. You have the power to change it. And the retrograde, when it comes, it does affect us in a negative way, but it also, to me, is it's an energy, it's maturing, right? It's putting us into a deeper place. So let me see, how can I get into it? No, it doesn't mean you'll never have good finances. Okay, so let's go into a little bit of retrograde, okay? So Mercury, let me take a sip. Okay, so this year, 2022, Mercury will be in retrograde 4 times. And it was from January 14th to February 3rd. And then from May 10th to June 3rd. And then it's going to be from September 9th to October 2nd, my birthday, and then December to January 18th. So when Mercury is in retrograde, it means that we are involved with how we perceive things, how we interpret things, and how we communicate information. And it's the quality of the symbolic meaning that depends on the path in the heavens above. So instead of moving fast and direct like usual, Mercury shifts into a slower speed, sometimes a backwards motion. It's actually a backwards motion that happens through the zodiac when it's in retrograde. So retrograde means that it's going into a backwards motion. And the departure of Mercury takes from its normal course. So when it's retrograde, it responds to a heightened ability to guide us away from our usual patterns. And that enables the discovery of new avenues of our perception. So Mercury also comes closest to the Earth in orbit when it's in retrograde. So Mercury comes closest to the Earth. And that's why it intensifies its impact in daily matters. Okay. So let's go into so that was Mercury. Let's go into I want to go into the planet, more of the planet. So do you kind of get what retrograde means? It's the closest to the Earth. and then kind of the backwards. So let me see. Just gotta go down my outline. We did the houses. We talked about that. Did I do that? Okay, so let's talk about the house system a little bit more. I really want you guys to look at your chart. Now, I don't know if you were on in the earlier or before the recording, but the charts that I laid out for you are quite basic and you can build from them. So I do want you to add some of these things to your chart, okay? And I will be giving you an exercise for you to practice and learn. So let's go into what a house system is. So the house system, we already know the pie, right? The house system is a way of dividing the sky into 12 meaningful sections. So think of it as the 12 slices of the pie, and each slice represents a certain measure or portion of the sky. So think about the constellations as well as the planets, right? They all hold space in the sky. And because of the tilt of the Earth's axis, so the way it's tilted, there is an angular relationship with the ecliptic circle or the imaginary circle, right? It's actually an oval. But upon the 12 constellations of the zodiac are placed, and therefore, as many as there are constellations, actually, no, what was I saying? Therefore, as many as 3 constellations can fit into one house, not planets, constellations. And these are various methods of also calculating. And these are called calculating angles. Okay. So calculating houses is part of calculating a chart. And as I talked about it earlier, we don't calculate charts. We don't calculate charts. We don't calculate there. Okay, let me just get into it. Calculating houses is part of calculating a chart. So there's 3 different calculations of the houses to choose from. The most common is a tropical chart, and that represents the Placidus house system. Okay. And then there's the Koch, so Koch, which is also gaining a lot of respect. And this is another house system. Okay. And when you look at your report that I did for you, let me find the one. That's not it. What house system did I use on yours? I use the tropical Koch. So you'll see that on your natal chart. It says that. So we use the tropical system, and that's just like how I've learned. So a lot of these systems do have to do with where the equator is, as well as the angles. So there's several other house systems that are used in astrology. And I kind of talked about that last class that has to do with the Native American and the different cultures and the different ways. The most important reason for choosing your house system, which I recommend the one I'm teaching you, is because it will give you lots of different choices. So when I talk about these house systems, A lot of astrologists will get an astrology system, and that astrology system, I have it for my store too, where you can put in people's birthday and you choose what type of report you want. So this is more of a computer program thing that gives you these choices. When you're interpreting a chart like I'm teaching you, this doesn't have really much to say, but I do want to tell you about it because there are actual systems that you can use, especially in the books that we get our information from, which I'm going to teach you about. So you'll see that they do talk about these different house systems. Okay, the one we're using is the tropical conch. So if you said, one of you asked, can your chart be changed? Yeah, tropical conch. Yeah, that's right. So some of you, can your chart be changed? No, but it could be a little different depending on which system the person is using to create the chart. Okay. So our conch system has with it all of the bad aspects and the good aspects. And that's one reason why I like to use that system, because it shows positive and negative. Where if you just use the conch, well, not the tropical conch, it's going to describe negative. So there isn't positive. So there's different attributions. Okay. Some of you will be like, I don't care. So learn my way, this way. You can explore others after the class, not during. Okay, so we know that we have 12 houses. The first house is Aries, which is the house of personality, and the quality is the personality. Okay. The second house is Taurus, and that is the house of money. And so remember that the quality is personal value. Okay. The third house is Gemini, the house of communication, and its quality is siblings. But remember, siblings are anyone in your inner world or world. Yeah, inner world. The fourth house is Cancer, the house of home and the quality of your home. The fifth is Leo, which is the house of children, which is creativity. The seventh is Libra. No, I didn't. The sixth is Virgo, the house of servants, which is also work. The seventh is Libra, which is the house of marriage and partnership. We go into the eighth, Scorpio, which is also known as the house of death. And that is, remember, the quality is sexuality. Sagittarius, house 9 is Sagittarius. And it's also known, I love this, the house of long journeys. And remember, the quality is philosophy. Then we have Capricorn, the 10th house, which is the house of career. And that represents your public life. So are you meant to be rich and famous? 9 is, or 11th is Aquarius. And that is a house of friends. And that is our socialization. And I love that because that represents your communication skills. So what's your best way to communicate, right? And that's something that's quite difficult for personal development, is finding your way to communicate where you can communicate easily, whether it's negative or positive, finding your language. The 12th house is Pisces, which is also known as the house of trouble. And the quality of that is our problems. So what problems were we destined to deal with? Okay. And again, I'm going to have an exercise for you on that, where you can fill out a little thing that will get you to remember traditional names as well as the quality. Okay. Now let's go into, I talked a little bit about angles, and I know we're getting close, but I want to get into the angles because this is quite important. There are 4 angles in the chart. So remember in the beginning, I told you, do your circle with the north, west, south, and east, right? The quarter, okay? The cross. Well, that first circle, so I'm going to draw it so you can see this, because this is really interesting, okay? So medicine wheel. Well, kind of. My medicine wheel is more like that, but yeah, okay. So here we have the cross in a circle, okay? So let's go to the first, the top part of it. Draw that. Actually, just draw your circle. So these 4 are angles. These are the 4 angles in the chart. Now, the first and the foremost important is the rising sign or the ascendant. We talked about that. And that falls on the far left end of the chart. So I'm going to put ASC. So I think, oh, how do I show you this? So I think this is opposite for you. But you can see west, the west side is the ascendant. Okay. So your left side. Okay. Now that far right side is known as the descendant. So DE or DSC is usually the way it looks on the chart. DSC. So that is the descendant. Okay. There you go. Now we're going to do the north and the south. So the top and the bottom. So the bottom point is the nadir. Nadir. So write that down. Nadir. And that is the bottom. And I'll get into that a little bit more. And the top part is midheaven. MID heaven. So on your chart, you should have midheaven, nadir, ascendant, and descendant on your chart. So these points are of a special importance when we look at a chart. And they represent the most important energies that are points in the chart. So they are referring back to our discussion of the houses, okay, where the other houses are placed and how they are varying depending on which house and system is adopted by us, the astrologer. So the angles represent the 4 cardinal archetypes of our life. So at the ascendant, put above it or below it or an arrow to it. That ascendant represents our personality. Okay. So that the left line is our personality. Our nadir, so our nadir, the bottom line, represents our home. So put home under it. And our descendant to the left or to the right represents our partners. And our midheaven represents our public life. Okay, it's like the midheavens watching how we are in our life. So those represent the 4 cardinal archetypes of our life. Now there's secondary archetypes that develop into these. So there's a second archetype that goes into these angles, and they are in the middle houses in each of these quadrants. Okay, so again, go to your ascendant where you drew it, and that ascendant represents not just personality, but the second archetype is values. So personality and value. And your descendant is going to be sensuality. And then our nadir is going to be aesthetics. So AETHETICS. And our midheaven is our public life and society. And that is the second archetype that is developing our theme through these angles. And now there's a third, and these act as the expression of the angles. So the third and mutable houses of each quadrant represent transitional. So these are transitional archetypes, transforming one cardinal power into the next archetype. And this is your ascendant is expression. Okay, so that represents personality, values, and expression. The nadir is home, aesthetics, and we have purpose. Our home is our purpose, right? Our family, our home. Let's go into the descendants. So you should have partner, sensuality, and the third is morality, right? So your morals, morality. So when you take a look at relationships, right? What is it that you're going to accept and not accept, right? Does your relationship match your morality? And your midheaven, we have public life, society, and existence. Our existence. And that is quite important. And I believe it's called existentialism. So the word is existence, IALISM, existentialism. So the ascendant that you have there with personality, values, and expression is, of course, the personality through which the energy of the sun and the moon are channeled. So that's the ascendant, the energy of the sun and the moon and how they're channeled. And this is a prime focus of our personality that is extended from our inner being. And it goes out into the outer world. It's a sense of our personal values that further exemplifies as we learn how to express ourselves. And from here, it has we have a home life, we have a personal life, and approach to life. So these help us establish a sense of purpose and direction. And it adds meaning to our experience and our interaction within the world, which brings us to our partners we choose in life, the affections that we have for them, the morality that we use to evaluate and regulate behavioral interactions. And then that gets translated into larger groups in a public persona, which also creates an existential presence that teaches us to make new adjustments to the personality as we start again with each new cycle or each new person. But we are on a higher level. So you will want to take a look at the exercises I do, and it'll be easy. If you can't print them out, you'll be able to draw them. And this will help you put it into like picture form, because I know you're listening to me. And you might want to listen to this a couple of times. I know when I was learning astrology, I did have to, like, some things didn't click for me. Some things were easier to click than others. And it was just like what I was interested in, and the things that I wasn't interested in, I didn't really want. I don't want to know about my problems. I got it, right? So you will be shown how to do this on your own. And there's some exercises that I think you will have fun. So before we go, I still have a couple minutes. I do want to get into planets, asteroids, and their function. Okay, so the planets are the activators of the chart. They're the activating energy. They activate the energy in any house or constellation according to their nature. So we have the sun. The sun represents the sense of our life purpose and our personal significance as a human being. The sun card in tarot, life's purpose. I know most of you, I think all of you in this class are in my tarot class too, which rocks. So the sun is life's purpose and our personal significance. The Luna, the moon, represents our higher self, our subconscious mind, our memory, our habit patterns. So where is the moon in your chart? Because there's some habit patterns in those houses. And it also represents our personal role, like our personal role and the conditioning, and also our role models and the conditioning that we've been programmed with. So conditions are shown in that as well. So subconscious, higher self, and as well as role model conditioning. Mercury represents the power of observation and the reason and the ability to communicate and comprehend. So what was it? Where's the Mercury in your chart? What is your power of observation? What is it that you have the ability to communicate? Right? What's your communication power? Venus is creative imagination, personal tastes, values, our desires, our inclinations, but also our tendencies. So what is that imagination and that personal taste? What is your values? What is it that it's trying to get? What does it want? Where is it in your chart? Mars represents ambition, and it's the vehicle for expressing our personal violations. It also represents our dynamic nature and our energy. So ambitious energy, good and bad. We also have Jupiter. So Jupiter is generosity, expansion, growth, expression of personal power. And it is always something that is growing and expansive power. So you said your second house of money is Libra and Jupiter, but Jupiter is in retrograde. Now that makes sense, right? Creativity, generosity, expression. So your money is in your expression. Wow, that fits with tarot and whatever else you do, I'm sure. Saturn represents, how do I say that? Consolidation of personal power. So it is personal power in a constructed and disciplined manner. So it represents us kind of refined, okay? Our personal power structures. Uranus is a higher octave of Mercury, and it represents the unconscious and sudden destruction of patterns that impede our growth and our knowledge. How interesting is that, right? Because that shows sudden situations and what's trying to stop our growth and also our self-knowledge. So quite enlightening with that one. I guess that's why it's called Uranus. Okay, Neptune is a higher octave of Venus. So it represents creative imagination that is used to produce spiritual pursuits. Okay, so imagination that's used to produce spiritual vision, pursuits, like guidance, following that guidance, right? So if you have Neptune and Venus together, whoa, total power in creation there. Same with Mercury and Uranus. Then it's like, wow, right? So any of these that are a higher octave of the other is double power. So Pluto is a higher octave of Mars. And that destroys patterns of misuse in our personal power that stops us from our true self-expression. So Pluto is good. When Pluto comes, I'm like, yeah, it's breaking me free because maybe I'm misusing personal power. It also wants us to have our true self-expression. So with the exception of 2 planets, all are named after male gods. Crazy, hey? And it's one way of bringing balance to this is by including asteroids. So let's go into that. And there is only one, let's see, Chiron. Okay, yeah. Okay. So asteroids were considered to be goddess energy, except for one, which is Chiron. So you'll see Chiron, Chiron, Chiron represents wisdom gained through self-inflicted wounds. Yep, the things that we do to ourselves when we don't know. So wisdom gained through self-inflicted wounds that transform our personal identity. Think about the things that you did that transformed who you were. That was the power of Chiron. Then we have Ceres. So C-E-R, Ceres, C-E-R-E-S. And that asteroid is our style of nurturing, as well as the creativity that is in giving and receiving. Okay? Giving and receiving. Holy, I was way far. Okay, so we have Pallas Athene, which represents connecting to the outer world through self, right? Now, connecting to the outer world of the self, oh my God, of the self is usually through cultural lines and connections. So Pallas v Athene, when that is in power, when that is in our astrological horoscope for the day, let's say, then there is some kind of connection to the world outside. But it has to do with ourself and something cultural. So whenever I know that Pallas Athene is in the air, I know that I can tap into ancestral wisdom or ancestral power through my culture. And I practice a lot of magic with my culture. Vesta, I love Vesta, the goddess of Vesta. And Vesta gives us the ability to focus and concentrate in our own undivided manner. So our whole self is able to concentrate and focus on something. I like that because I know that when I'm doing my work and Vesta's energy is there, I'm in a balanced state. My masculine and feminine are connected to what it is I'm focusing and concentrating on. Juno is connected to commitment and a loyal partnership. So, and Lilith. Lilith is the shadow in the personality. And remember, Lilith is known as the dark goddess. So she will bring us our shadow selves out. And again, you're going to get an exercise that's going to get you to try to memorize the planets. And when you do, you want to know what the 5 asteroids are and what their functions are. So we just went over that. The asteroids are the names of the 4 goddesses in Chiron. Okay, now let me see. I think I'm going to end there. Oh, but there is a really, really good thing to go on. Do I wait? Okay, I'm going to wait on this awesome thing for next class. But until then, I do want to finish this. So I do want to talk about the dual role of luminaries as parents. So the luminaries are the sun and the moon, and they are 2 very special planets to astrologers. And one of the most obvious reasons for this is how important they have been used as sources of light in the sky. So remember, your magical power came from the light in the sky the day and the time you were born. The other is the relationship that they have as parents. Yeah, as parental figures. The moon, Luna, being the mother, and the Son being the Father. And some of you who are in the sacred circle know that when we do our charge of the goddess and the god, we are charging the sun and the moon, the father and the mother. And more than this, they expand in meaning as we consider the role of both parents that they play in our life. So we can look at our mother, the moon, that determines the nature of our intimate relationship and the relationships reflected back on our view of our mother. And this planet specifically represents the feelings that are cultivated in this relationship and the responses that we have to our intimate partners. So the sun represents our father's role in our development, as our father imparts us to our identity. Specifically, our father represents our ideas of and approach to individualization, so our individuality. And this, of course, describes the lonely, chaotic, and dangerous journey to that spiritual prize that is the certain discovery of our own individual destiny. So when we look at both of these, the sun and the moon, and these planets, specifically by the angular relationship they intake with each other and the other planets, we can contribute to these qualities as luminaries. So they're parental qualities. And it's important to note this because it describes how we are as parents, how we see our parents, and how the sun and the moon and that connection to our divine mother and father, how they appear in the eyes of us, like our belief in the god and the goddess. So I'm going to stop there, and next class we're going to get into this a little further. So next class we're going to get into more things of the zodiac, the cardinal signs, the quadrants, a bunch more. So play with your charts, put a little more info on what you find with the information, and do these exercises because they will help you. When you're listening to it, it's a lot to listen to, but when you're looking at it and putting it together, like to me, it's like I'm putting together someone's game of life. This is like the things they're born into and the things that they can use as a tool to amplify and create what it is that they want in their life. Okay. So before we go, let's pull a card. I need a card, Brett. Grab me a card of some kind. Oh, in there, sorry. Okay. We're gonna do angel cards because that's what's in my box. So let's see what we get. Okay. Holy, my throat is raw. Okay. We're gonna pull a card before we go. And if you do have any questions, you can ask. And I'm going to pull a card for each of you here. And then those that aren't, I'm going to pull a general card. Okay. what is a north node? Sorry. Sundance. Have you ever watched the Sundance?
No, but I knew people who did it.
I have lots of my family have done it. We have a place on our ebb and flow reservation where I'm from. It's called Eagle Island, and that's where my grandfather did his Sundance. And they wanted to do the powwow on it last summer. You're never supposed to do powwow where someone Sundance, so it was a huge fight on the reserve, but they did end up moving it. But it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so this north node in astrology represents your North Star. It's actually what it means. So wherever your true north is, that represents your true north. Okay. And we'll get into the true north. We'll get into more of that. I'll make sure we go into that in the next class. So the true north is not known as a celestial body, but it does represent the point where the moon's orbit and the plane of it, the time that you were born. So it's the story of your soul's journey through the life that you've lived so far. And some people will say you need to live in your north node. Have you ever heard that? Well, that means you need to live your destiny and your karmic path. So the North Node represents your destiny and karmic path as well. It usually wants us to acquire, stretch ourselves out of our comfort zone. Um, but it does represent aligning ourselves to our true purpose. And I'll talk about that. Yeah, I'll go into it next class. So let's do some cards and see what we get. So your workbook I'm talking about will still be a few days, okay? But I will have it sent out to you. So by Monday, I think it's all my deadlines by Monday. So Heather, let's pull a card for you first. And you have enchantment. So you're meant to connect with like synchronicities and coincidences, and there's enchantment around you. So elemental energies, what element is in play? That's what I would be asking, because that will let you know what you're meant to be receiving right now. Lorraine, let's see what you get. Surrender and release. Surrender and release. So that makes sense with you. I definitely know you're going through a release right now. So let it happen. You're meant to let go of things, right? Relax, let healing take place. So that is happening to you. Release and surrender. I don't want it, like freaking take it. That's when that card comes in. Let's pull one for the others. What cards do they get? Meditation. Probably because they're all working and need to have a rest after. I don't know my purpose, path in life, so I was drawn to astrology and tarot to try and figure it out. That's wicked. It is. It's like finding out your equation, putting it your plan and putting it all together. And once you figure yours out as you're doing this, you'll be able to figure out for other people. Even if you don't use it as a chart, but you're interpreting their chart, you're definitely going to get that info. So your connections as astrologists, as you're looking at your charts and studying yours and others, soulmate. So take a look at the people around you. What's happening? Are they in their positive? Are they in their negative? Have fun with it. Okay. With that, I'm going to let you go. This recording will be sent out to you as soon as it's finished. Have a great night. Sorry I kept you over, and many blessings. Bye-bye. Have a great night.